I once watched a multi-million dollar capital investment get approved in a board meeting in just 11 minutes. The NPV was positive. The IRR exceeded the hurdle rate. Every assumption was documented and sourced. The project was fully modeled in a beautiful spreadsheet. It also lost tens of millions of dollars over the next 4 years. Here's what the spreadsheet didn't say: the revenue assumptions were built backwards from the answer that someone had already decided on. The math was correct, the inputs were fiction. Today, I'm going to try to show you how to tell the difference. Hello, my name is Todd Hagopian, the original Stagnation Assassin and the author of The Unfair Advantage Weaponizing the Hypomanic Toolbox. And today, on the Stagnation Assassin MBA, we're cracking open net present value. I'm going to tell you why they teach this in the program, what they leave out, and what you actually need to know if you're running a real business in the real world. Understanding NPV is non negotiable for any operator who sits in capital allocation conversations. If you cannot challenge the math, then you cannot protect the business. So, this is all very, very important. Let's talk about the textbook version of NPV. Here's what the textbook says. And to be fair, they are not wrong. Net present value is the foundational tool of capital budgeting. The concept is elegant. A dollar today is worth more than a dollar in the future because today's dollar can be invested and it can earn a return. NPV discounts all future cash flows back to the present using a required rate of return, the discount rate, and then subtracts the initial investment. If the result is positive, then the project creates value. And if it's negative, then the project destroys value. The NPV formula is NPV equals sum of cash flow in period T divided by 1 plus the discount rate exponent of T minus the initial investment. Irving Fisher formalized the time value of money concept in the early 20th century, and Joel Dean brought capital budgeting methodology into corporate practice in the 1950s. Today, NPV is taught as theoretically correct method for capital allocation decisions at every major business school, and it is under the right conditions. Let's look at the real world debrief and see where it holds. This is where NPV actually earns its tuition. NPV is the right framework when you need to compare dissimilar investment options on a common basis. Want to compare investing in a new production line versus acquiring a smaller competitor versus returning capital to shareholders? NPV gives you a theoretically consistent framework for making all of those comparisons on one Excel sheet. Nothing else does this as cleanly. NPV also works well as a discipline forcer. When I've required business unit leaders to build full NPV models for capital requests, the quality of their thinking improves dramatically. The process of projecting cash flows over 5 years forces operators to make explicit assumptions that would otherwise remain implicit. And implicit assumptions are where bad decisions hide. The NPV model isn't just an answer machine, it's an assumption extraction device. And the assumptions are where the real argument should be. I've also used MPV successfully to kill bad projects, not just approve good ones. A negative NPV under reasonable assumptions is the clearest possible signal that a project requires either a fundamental restructuring or an outright rejection. Used this way, NPV is the mathematical equivalent of the Correlon method, overwhelming force applied to a single point in the process. But let's look at the operating room. Where does NPV break down? And here's where the professor sits down and the operator stands up. NPV has three critical vulnerabilities that every operator must understand. Vulnerability one: the model is only as good as the inputs. Cash flow projections are forecasts, discount rates are judgments. Terminal values, more on those in the later episode, are often the largest component of an NPV and the hardest to estimate. The mathematical precision of the NPV formula creates a false sense of confidence in the inputs that are fundamentally still uncertain. NPV gives you 6 decimal places of precision on a foundation of assumptions. That is not rigor That's decorated guessing. Vulnerability 2. NPV can be manipulated to justify decisions that are already made. I've seen this happen repeatedly in Fortune 500 environments. A leader decides that they want to acquire a company or build a factory or launch a product. The NPV model gets built afterward to confirm the decision. The revenue assumptions stretch, the cost assumptions compress, the discount rate quietly gets lowered. You skip 3 stages in the stage gate, yada, yada, yada. NPV that says what the decision maker needs it to say. This assumption that the model is objective when the inputs are political is where NPV meets reality and starts to blink. Vulnerability 3. NPV ignores execution risk. 2 projects with identical NPVs can have completely different risk profiles based on the certainty of their cash flows, the capability of the team executing them, and the volatility of the market they're entering. The model does not capture this at all, and operators who don't add it back manually will systematically overpay for risky projects. Here is your operator's upgrade. 3 moves that every operator should make when evaluating an NPV analysis. First, challenge the revenue assumptions before anything else. Revenue is the variable with the most room for manipulation and the most impact on the outcome. Ask what would the NPV look like if revenue came in 20% below production, 30% below production. If the project fails under those scenarios, you need a very compelling reason that the base case is realistic. Second, run a sensitivity analysis on the discount rate. Most corporate discount rates are set by the finance department and reflect some version of the weighted average cost of capital. But operational risk varies by project. A capital project in a new market should carry a higher discount rate than one in a core business that's just common sense but not common finance. Push for risk-adjusted discount rates. Third, apply the 70% rule. Do you have 70% confidence in the key assumptions, not 100%? That's paralysis. But not less than 70% either. If critical assumptions can't meet the threshold, the project isn't ready for capital approval. The Stagnation Assassin verdict: NPV is tough, but you have to weaponize it. It's a good, legitimate operational tool, but only when wielded by someone who understands both the math and the manipulation risk. Learn it well enough to build it and challenge it. Use it as an assumption extraction device, not just an approval mechanism. And never let a positive NPV substitute for operational judgment. That's NPV. That's the formula that captures and that's what the formula captures and what the operator must add to it. For more on protecting capital and weaponizing financial thinking, grab The Unfair Advantage on Amazon. Follow the Stagnation Assassin show. Check out toddhagopian.com and stagnationassassins.com for the world's largest stagnation database. And learn NPV well enough to build it, learn it, and well enough to challenge it, which is the most important part of NPD as a assumption extraction device. Thank you.